welcome back to the Room of Requirement. So today we are going to be diving into a really fascinating subject, and it is going to be discussing what happens to you psychologically on a spiritual path. And no one really explains this, so I want to give you guys some insight as to what happens. I will say that once you start practicing specific rituals, this happened to me. It always affects you psychologically first, and then it starts to affect the higher levels or more spiritual aspects of yourself, and where more milestones can be reached. Okay, so always know that everything happens to us psychologically, and then it moves on from there. And it's really complex when it happens, and when it does happen, you might be taken aback by some of the experiences that you have due to this. So anyhow, let's just go ahead and dive right into this and see what you guys think. Okay. The changes no one explains. When you begin a real spiritual practice, something starts to change, but not always in the way that you expect. At first, it may feel subtle, almost unnoticeable, but over time, the internal landscape begins to shift. Your attention changes, your emotional responses reorganize, your perception deepens, and the patterns you never noticed begin to surface. This is where, when you say your spiritual path isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not all love and light, once you start to go deeper into who you are, like know thyself, these things start to reemerge, and it's not easy at first. I've seen this happen with my students, even up until recently today when I seen one of my students. I got her nervous system super regulated, so now all of these things are starting to come to the surface that you have to deal with, and don't be intimidated by that. It's a sign of real progress. Okay? So your attention changes, your emotional responses reorganize, and your perception deepens, and patterns you never noticed begin to surface. This process can feel inspiring at times and also confusing or even destabilizing at others. So especially when there is no clear framework to understand what is happening. Across traditions, whether contemplative, ritual, devotional, or philosophical, the same underlying process unfolds, even if it is described differently. If you understand the structure of this process, you can stop questioning whether something is wrong and begin to recognize where you are. Before anything else, spiritual practice is psychological in its immediate effect. It changes how attention functions, how identity is constructed, how emotion is processed, and how perception is organized. What one system calls awakening, another calls awareness, another calls it gnosis, but the practitioner first experiences it as a shift in how their mind operates. The earliest change is not mystical, but perceptual. You begin to notice what was previously automatic. This is why the beginning can feel unstable, because the structure of your own mind is being revealed in real time. And this can happen in a myriad of different ways. Emotions, trauma, pain coming to the surface. And it's okay. Don't be afraid of that. I don't want to scare anybody off from that at all, but this can be a really, really good thing. This is all about the pursuit of enlightenment, right? And to do that, we have to make ourselves better, and we have to look at the things within us that we have been shoving down for a long time. Okay, so because the structure of your own mind is being revealed in real time, the deeper the practice, the more this practice becomes unavoidable. Stage 1, days 1 through 30. Contact and resistance. The first stage is contact with practice, and almost immediately resistance appears. Attention is unstable, the mind wanders constantly, and the body resists silence. Just stick with it though when this happens. Okay, just stick with it, because here's where it's going to get good. So practice may feel uneventful or ineffective, which often leads to doubt. What is actually happening is exposure to the baseline instability that was always present but unnoticed within you. So, for example, someone sitting in meditation for the first time may feel overwhelmed by the volume of thought, while someone performing a structured ritual may feel disconnected or unstable to maintain focus. The important point is not the method, but the revelation. The mind is not yet stable. The milestone here is consistency, the ability to return to practice daily, regardless of how it feels. Stage 2, weeks 4 to 8. Sensitivity and initial shifts. As practice continues, sensitivity increases and subtle shifts begin to appear. Attention stabilizes slightly, and patterns in thought, emotion, and behavior become more visible. There may be brief moments of stillness, clarity, or heightened perception, but these are often inconsistent. This stage can feel encouraging but also disorienting because awareness is increasing faster than stability. For example, one practitioner may notice quiet gaps between thoughts, while another may notice how quickly emotion arises and passes. The form differs, but the function is the same. Awareness is beginning to turn inward. The milestone here is recognition, the ability to observe without immediate reaction or concluding. Stage 3, months 2 through 4. As sensitivity deepens, underlying patterns surface more clearly. Emotional responses, habitual thinking, and unconscious behaviors become difficult to ignore. This stage often feels more difficult than the beginning because what is being revealed is no longer surface level distraction, but deeper psychological structure. It may feel like regression, stronger emotional reactions, more visible internal conflict, but it is actually exposure. For example, someone may notice reoccurring thought loops they cannot easily disengage from, or emotional triggers that seem more intense than before. What has changed is not the pattern, but the awareness of it. The milestone here is tolerance, the ability to remain with what is being revealed without abandoning the practice. And this is where a lot of people quit, because that shadow stuff starts coming up to the surface. They're like, I'm not dealing with this. I didn't expect it to be this way. But to get through these things, you have to face them head on. And this is part of the practice that nobody really talks about. But it is the most integral part of the practice. Okay, stage 4, months 4 through 6. Stabilization and early integration. While continued consistency, the system begins to stabilize. Attention becomes more reliable, emotional reactivity softens, and awareness starts to carry into daily life. The practitioner begins to notice that the effects of the practice are no longer confined to the session itself. Instead, perception shifts throughout the day. Responses slow down, reactions become less automatic, and a subtle sense of space appears between thought and action. At this stage, experiences may still occur, but they are no longer central. What becomes noticeable instead of is stability, and the milestone here is carryover. Practice influencing perception beyond the practice itself. Stage 5, 6 to 12 months. Structural change and identity. Now this right here, once you hit that 6-month mark, it skyrockets you. If you are being consistent, this is where you're going to see way more intensity happening and way more growth at a rapid rate if you stick with it for at least 6 months. That's my golden spot. Let's see. At this stage, deeper change begins to occur in how the practitioner relates to themselves. Identity becomes less rigid, and awareness becomes more continuous. Thoughts and emotions still arise, but they're no longer experienced as defining. There is a growing sense of separation between awareness and content. This is not disassociation, but differentiation, the ability to observe without immediate identification. For example, a thought that previously triggered reaction is now seen as a pattern rather than a command. So this milestone here is continuity. Awareness remains present across different internal and external conditions. Stage 6, 1 year and beyond. Refinement and deepening. Beyond the first year, development becomes less about visible milestones and more about refinement. The practitioner continues to stabilize, deepen, and integrate. Changes are more subtle but more permanent. Perception becomes more precise. Reactions become more measured, and the internal system becomes more coherent. At this stage, the path is no longer driven by experience, but by continuity. The milestones here is coherence, a stable, integrated way of perceiving and responding that does not depend on specific conditions. Cross-path insight. Different language, same process. Although traditions describe these stages differently, emptiness, gnosis, alignment, awakening, the underlying process is consistent. Attention stabilizes, patterns surface, identity shifts, and perception reorganizes. What differs is interpretation, not structure. Understanding this removes unnecessary confusion and allows the practitioner to remain grounded, regardless of the system they are working within. How to tell if you're progressing. Progress is not determined by the intensity or frequency of the experience, but by stability. You are progressing if your attention becomes more consistent, your reactions soften, your awareness becomes more continuous, and your behavior begins to reflect greater coherence. You are not progressing if you rely on intensity, constantly changing your methods, or require experience to validate practice. Stability, not experience, is the measure. Psychological framework, Jungian individuation, and human development. What has been described throughout these stages is not separate from psychology. It is deeply aligned within it. In Jungian terms, this process mirrors individuation, which is the gradual integration of unconscious material into conscious awareness. What begins as distraction evolves into exposure of deeper psychological structures, shadow, unresolved patterns, and internal fragmentation. Spiritual practice does not remove these elements, it reveals them so they can be integrated. This is why the middle stages often feel more difficult than the beginning, because the practitioner is no longer dealing with the surface level instability, but with the deeper structure of the self. The practitioner who avoids this stage remains fragmented, while the one who stays with it develops coherence. At the same time, this process aligns with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A practitioner must stabilize foundational layers, physical, emotional, psychological, before higher states of awareness can remain stable. As development progresses, awareness, regulation, and integration begin to align. What is often described as awakening can be understood as coherence across these layers. A practitioner who has intense experiences but remains unstable has not integrated the process, while one who becomes more stable, clear, and consistent is progressing in alignment with both psychological and spiritual development. The path, when understood correctly, is not separate from human development. It is a refinement of it. What happens to you on the spiritual path is not random. It follows a pattern: contact, sensitivity, exposure, stabilization, integration, and refinement. Each stage has its own challenges, and each requires consistency to move through. You are not lost, and you are not failing. You are moving through a structured process that becomes clear once it's understood. Final closing. When you begin in a spiritual practice, you are entering a process that gradually reorganizes how you think, feel, and perceive. And this process does not unfold all at once, but moves through stages that can feel subtle, uncomfortable, stabilizing, or eventually coherent. Many practitioners stop because they misunderstand what is happening, believing they are failing when they are progressing, or believing they have arrived when they have only begun. But if you understand that progress is not measured by intensity, but by what becomes stable within you, then the path becomes clear. You stop chasing experiences, you stop questioning every phase, and you begin to recognize that what you are building takes time, repetition, and consistency. And as you remain with it, something begins to shift, not suddenly, but steadily, until your perception changes, your reactions soften, and your awareness becomes something you can rely on. And that is where the path stops being something you're searching for and becomes something you are actually walking. Okay, you guys, I hope this one really helps. I will probably be doing some more videos on the psychological effects of different types of practices and some more comparison videos. I also have some more spiritual path comparison videos going on, and spiritual practice comparisons videos. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I look forward to bringing in some more subjects for you. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.